future trends, deep insights, industry leaders. This is the iGaming Next podcast with your host, Pierre Lind.
This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Solutions, the leading iGaming PAM platform with a modular approach, including many benefits like a fast, secure, and scalable API-based platform, integrated with all major third-party products and services. Make sure you head over to Pragmatic Solutions and join our smart thinking.
And Sanjay, I have a very first important question for you here. Who is the GOAT?
Starting off really controversial. It's GSP for sure, Georges St-Pierre.
Just this was a trick question here in the beginning of the podcast here, Sanjay, because there's only one right answer to this question, and that is, of course, the last emperor, Fyodor Emelianenko. How can you not?
Yeah,
follow this.
Of course, we're all biased, right? Like us being Canadian, it's like GSP. But yeah, this conversation, I've spent so many hours discussing this over food with friends, and it's a never-ending conversation. But I love it. I love it nonetheless.
Yes. So that's when I started to kind of get into the MMA scene back in the Pride days, and it was kind of when Fyodor was this mythical fighter. He was this heavyweight fighter from Russia who was much smaller than all the other heavyweights, and he went like 30-0 at that time. Or he had like one loss, but the loss was not really a loss. And he was seen as this, like, you know, he's not human at that time, because in the UFC these days, in the heavyweight division, there's only ever like two fighters in the heavyweight division who have defended the belt more than twice or something like that, whereas like Fyodor defended it like 10 times or something. Yeah, that is my case, at least for Fyodor. So I'll stand my ground on that. But yeah, GSP is a good option as well.
No, I totally see where you're coming from. Like those, like back in the Pride days, those were like 2004, 2006 kind of days. I was really young at the time, and so I'm so sad that I missed them. But every time somebody, because like of course, you can never capture the zeitgeist of that time fully once you're like into the future. And so that's something that I actually like am sad that I missed. But it seems like there were so many legendary moments on Rumble on the Rock and Pride that I'm just like, I wish I didn't miss those.
Yeah. I mean, Pride was funny because it's obviously there was a Japanese MMA organization, and they had all these like funny things going on. Like they had like the announcer, the screaming lady. I don't know if you ever like her. She was legendary. This woman who announced the fighters, and she was screaming the fighter's name in like a really like manic way, and you were like, oh my god, what's happening here? But she was fantastic. You know, that's a very like Japanese kind of culture. They made it into a spectacle back then. You know,
I love it, and they still do. It seems. I mean, it's a reason I love Japanese culture in general. They put 100% effort in everything.
Yeah, exactly, and they from a different perspective for sure. So as an introduction here, as the listeners can hear already, like if you're not a fight fan or MMA fan, this podcast is probably not for you today. Or if you want to learn about MMA and kind of understand why it's in my opinion, and I'm sure Sanjay's opinion, the best sport in the world, then this definitely is the podcast today, because Sanjay obviously is the CEO and CTO, and I believe the co-founder of Verdict MMA. And Sanjay, I'll let you just kind of start here off by introducing yourself and the project a bit, because this is very interesting what you have built here over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's been a long journey. It's been longer than the last few years. It actually started back in 2013 with two of my high school friends, and it was Mandeep and David. And we actually saw a fight together, and it was with GSP, and it was GSP versus Johnny Hendricks. And in that fight, we saw that GSP actually, at the end, we sort of thought that he lost. And we were kind of sad about that. But when the decision came, he actually ended up winning. And so we were curious what the entire world thought. And so I was in software at the time. Mandeep was really into social media and into the fight game. and David was also into software. And so what we decided to do was create an app where we could crowdsource scoring data and figure out what people actually thought. And for me, this was actually just kind of like a side project where I could learn a ton about software and apply it to something that I love. Because there's no better way of learning than kind of creating something that you want to create for yourself, right? And so, we to your point, you probably saw the hard launch, which was in 2018 of November. And that's where we actually brought round scoring and fight predictions to users all over the world. And we rapidly grew without a marketing budget at all, just through social media. And from there, we kind of saw the opportunity in DFS and gaming.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so I've been checking out the site now. So it's basically, kind of like fight predictions. And now you're going into DFS. You just raised capital as well from a couple of friends of ours as well. We're going to go in to that a little bit later as well. But I suppose like a question for you on the MMA side of things. Like, when did this interest in MMA come about for you? I know that you have background in martial arts as well. You're Taekwondo ace and stuff like that. Like, what's the background that led you into?
It's an interesting story. Like when I was a kid, I was like 6 or something, and I was being a brat, I remember. And my dad just took me somewhere. It's like one of those stories where he told me, we're gonna go to the dentist or something. But we ended up at a Taekwondo dojo. And he signed me up, and
it's a different type of dentist. It's a pretty mean. It can be a pretty bad dentist.
So Pierre, we actually did ITF Taekwondo. So it was me and my cousin at the time, and we did ITF Taekwondo. So it's really physical with the sparring. It's not like just kicks. It's kicks and punches. And
yes.
Yeah, and so I was in Taekwondo for many years. For about 10 years, I eventually got my second degree, black belt. And then I went off to university, came back, and I kept up with a few of the fights in the meantime. One fighter that really stuck out to me was Anderson Silva. Like when I watched him fight, it was like some sort of mirror neurons firing off in my head, because I could really really feel his stance and him throwing the kicks. And I immediately knew that guy's doing Taekwondo. And that's what kind of got me hooked into MMA. It was kind of that really cool, kind of what you experienced during the Pride days, which was like really seeing the different martial arts battle each other. And that was like a really compelling part of the story, where people would be like, how's that wrestler going to do against the boxing? and people would kind of do the whole like Pokemon scenarios of, it's like, no, wrestling beats like striking, and sort of that vibe kind of got me into it. And then seeing GSP come in after that, that sort of solidified it. And then creating Verdict, it kind of just tied it all together and got me even more into it, just being associated with the community and everything. And I guess that's a really long story, but that's basically what got me really into it.
Yeah, I love it. So can you still do a split, Sanjay?
No, so I've never been able to do a split, but I've been able to do a really like mean spinning back kick. But I have had an injury since, so I don't really practice that too much anymore. But I do enjoy just watching. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And because Anderson Silva, when he came into the UFC, he fought Chris Lieben. Was the first fight he did, I think, in the UFC, and that was also like that time where, he was seen as almost this like unbeatable fighter. And at some point, Anderson Silva was like an absolute monster, and he still is. Like, that's the craziest thing, that he is like 47 years old or something, 46, 47. And now he goes into boxing, and he just he just destroys the really high level boxer. It's like world champion, and he's like 47 years old. Like, that guy is like one of a kind.
He's phenomenal. Like watching him fight has been some of the highest moments in my life. I don't know if you remember the buildup of him versus Vitor Belfort. And the buildup was extraordinary, and like nobody knew what was going to happen. And in hindsight, everyone says they knew, but during the time, that fight was just something people couldn't wait to see, because nobody knew what was going to happen. And then what happened was it was a front kick. It was a front kick just a simple front kick to the face. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's a front kick. Because you never see like something as simple as like a front kick take somebody out like that. And that's what Anderson did. And that's why, he's also on my Mount Rushmore of fighters.
Yeah, exactly. And it was after that fight that Vitor became TRT Vitor. Yes, he went full on TRT after that and just became like an absolute unit after that for a little while. When there was this strange time in the UFC where they allowed testosterone treatment basically. So some fighters just absolutely like pumped themselves with testosterone. And grew to become like superhumans for a while before they made it illegal again. It was a weird time.
Right. Yeah.
It would have been fun to see Vitor Belfort against Anderson Silva after he became juiced to the gills. Like, I wonder if the fight would have been different.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's always strange with drugs. They didn't test before, but it's good that they did start testing because people get hurt that way because it's just everyone's on an uneven ground. But what's exciting is when people are on kind of that even ground and training and kind of seeing the result from there.
Yeah. And that was like after they started to do the USADA testing, like really serious testing on the fighters. That's when you saw a lot of fighters fading. So you mentioned like GSP versus Hendricks. That was like a great example of that because after that fight, and after they started testing Johnny Hendricks, he was one of those fighters who just faded out to nothingness after a while, and that was like kind of one of the speculations with Johnny Hendricks specifically that the USADA was what ended his career at that time. So
you never really know with I mean, we're never going to be able to know from the past like what has happened, but. You're right that his trajectory was everyone was expecting great things to happen, but it didn't come out to happen.
Well, for sure. And so Sanjay, I mean, in Verdict MMA, like we mentioned, you just went through this process of raising capital, and you mentioned that one fighter who is really on the map right now, Ben Askren, is one of the kind of strategic investors to Verdict MMA. Like, how did that partnership come about?
This is it's a pretty cool story. So Ben Askren is a really, really smart guy on social media. If you follow him, he's very active on social media. He has a really good presence.
He built a name for himself. Yeah.
Right. And so what we did was Mandeep actually reached out to him. Mandeep also has a really strong social media presence and social media game. He'll just DM everybody. And so DMing Ben Askren was a really good move. And after that, we kind of recognized that Ben Askren has some great value to add over here. When we went into fundraising, we were really looking for people who could contribute value back to us and not just for money. And so we really wanted that two-way bridge to work, and we only wanted to work with people like that. And so Ben Askren checked all those boxes. He was somebody who was really in tune with the fighting community. He had really great network connections inside of mixed martial arts in general. And working with him has been a pleasure, just a blast. Talking to him and getting feedback from him. It's surprising. He's not a conventional investor, but just his wisdom, talking to him has been very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So his role in the company now is like a strategic advisor type of thing?
Yeah, like we actually met up with him in Las Vegas and talked to him for a bit and talked about many different angles that we could go down. And it's always interesting hearing people's perspectives and hearing his perspective on crypto and how that could work with Verdict. Like it's just cool hearing about all these combinations from from him.
Do you think he'll fight again?
I don't. I hope not. Like he's a guy who's had 2 hip surgeries and coming back from that. I actually think fighters retire a bit too late in their career. I think Khabib did an excellent move of making a name for himself, getting out, and then pursuing other avenues like coaching. And it's always sad to see a fighter kind of be in the game for too long. Somebody like Anderson Silva, for example, you could argue, I know he won his last boxing event, But seeing somebody like that just continuing to fight, you kind of like you kind of feel like they're like a father figure, and you're kind of like, you know, they're a bit too old to fight at that point, so you kind of feel bad.
I know. It's like it's a weird psychological thing to be a fighter, and I think people who haven't gone through that process don't understand the psychological kind of the extreme psychological nature of going through a fight. So, for example, you know, many fighters become depressed after a fight, like even if they win, because it's kind of like the journey that is the reward towards the fight. So even though a fight camp is really, really, really tough and really, really difficult, but towards the end of the fight camp, you feel like a machine. You know, you feel almost unbeatable, and like you feel you go through something very difficult. You go into war, and you're building towards this big thing. All the people around you support you, and then you win, let's say, and then you're happy for a moment, but then there's emptiness, because all of a sudden this big goal has been reached, and you don't have a big reason to stay as kind of motivated and to train or to do things in your daily life. And so a lot of fighters, they become addicted to the fighting. So after a fight, they want to fight right away again, because they want to have that big goal ahead of them, essentially. And there's this, for example, Tyson Fury is a good example of this, because he always dreamed to be the heavyweight champion boxer since he was a kid, you know, and his dream was to beat Vladimir Klitschko. And so his whole life, his whole purpose in life was built around this big goal of becoming the heavyweight champion. And once he managed to accomplish this, once he won against Klitschko, he fell into a deep depression, right? And he gained a lot of weight. He became a drug addict. He almost killed himself. And, you know, at some point there, he realized that it was time to get back on the horse, let's say. But this is quite common for fighters to get into this addictive nature of just seeking that big thrill that you get when you go through these fight camps. And so a lot of fighters, when you're into that mode, it's just very difficult to stop, you know, because what do you do? Like if your whole career has been fighting, what do you do after the life of fighting? It's really difficult, you know, for someone to, because it's like it's intertwined with their identity. Like everyone knows them as the big fighter, and then all of a sudden you take that away from someone. It's very scary for a lot of fighters. That's why, you know.
That's a great point. I think it's hard to empathize with fighters, right? It's not something you do part-time. It's not something you do casually. And so being wholeheartedly in the fight game, once that does get removed from your identity, I can see how that can be problematic. I can't speak from experience, but I feel like you can. Did you feel like that once, because you fought in K1, did you feel like after that fight, you kind of wanted to fight again, or you kind of felt like, you know, a particular way?
Yeah, no, for me, it was definitely like that. And for me, the biggest thing was that, I mean, when you're not training for a fight, it's impossible to keep that level of training. So, you know, we would train 10 times a week, and it was morning, evening. We train 11 times a week. It was morning, evening, and every training session is like the hardest training session you would ever do. You know, but it's like twice a day, and it's like uninterrupted. Without having a fight in front of you, because it's like, you know, you're nervous and it's anxiety riddled, and you're like, oh my God, what if I fuck up? And you don't want to like be an embarrassment in front of all the people and all the friends that support you. So you know, it's really difficult to not train at your 120%. And so when the fight is over, you know, it took maybe like a week and a half, and I went back to the gym, and I had some like lazy training session or whatever, and I just felt like every time I went back to the gym, I was a little bit worse than last time. So rather than becoming better, like I would go to the gym and I would become worse, you know. And so then your mind goes like, okay, like if I take another fight now, I can get back to that level again, because you feel really proud of yourself when you're in that good shape and all the things. And so that was like a bit scary to me, because I have friends who have fought for a long time, and like I've heard all the stories and all the things. So I was like, I got scared that I was feeling that I can understand why people get addicted to the fight game, and also like, I mean, you know how it is as well in Taekwondo. You train a long time. There's injuries, and those injuries accumulate, and they get worse and worse, and you can only hide them for so long, until they become chronic, so to say. So all the things just kind of scared me in a way. So I felt, okay, better to just accept to be like a casual like training, and kind of keep it on a good level and just feel good about that. But yeah, man, it's a lot of. I mean, it's really psychologically very difficult to be a fighter. Definitely, man.
I can only imagine. You would look like you were in amazing shape, and your performance was top notch against Antoine. Was that your last fight?
Yeah, exactly. That was the one. I used to compete a lot in submission wrestling before that as well, and that's more easy, because submission wrestling, which is like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu without the gi, essentially. That's much easier to compete in without being in like top shape, because you're not gonna get like knocked out. So it's easier to just go from competition to competition. So I think if anything, if I continue to compete, it would be in submission wrestling, so to say. So that would be it. Are you keeping up to what you mentioned, the Taekwondo training? Did you just compete as well then?
I didn't get to compete, not even close to semi-professionally like you did, which is because you had somebody commentating your match and an entire crowd, which it looked epic, by the way. But I didn't get anything close to that.
All right.
But maybe another life.
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. So Sanjay, like, back to Verdict MMA for a moment here, at least. The reason we got in contact with each other is because we have some really good friends that we got acquainted with over the last year or so. Bendy Cherniat, Chris Grove, and Lloyd Danzig. They were three guys who really helped us build our iGaming Next New York event, which we had a couple of months ago, and three of the kind of most well-known figures in the iGaming and online sports betting industry over in the United States. And they reached out to me and they mentioned, we've invested in this really great project. You should do a podcast with Sanjay, and we got introduced to each other. But can you talk a little bit about like how the process was when you went out to seek funding, especially now? I mean, the market is very difficult at the moment. How did you get in contact with Bendy, Chris, and Lloyd, and how was the process to kind of raise funding for you?
Yeah, the process was it was a lot of learning. It was our first time raising money ever. We've never done this before. And Mandeep was shooting all of our updates to all these investors all the time. And we had an entire list of venture capitalists, angel investors, people who were just trying to get new into the game as advisors. It was a whole mixed bag, but it was a huge learning experience for us. We kind of learned like the pros and cons of going with different folks. And there were a lot of no's, and it was really because people tend to focus on specific areas of expertise. And really, we were raising until we kind of found a group that matched with us, that kind of understood the language that we spoke. So it started off with Ben Askren, and Ben Askren, the day that we talked to him, a week later, not even a week later, like 5 days later, we had the money wired to us. And then right. And so it's really about finding the right people and then connecting with them, because they'll understand what you're proposing a lot better than somebody who's doing something completely different. And so when we came in contact with Chris Grove, we spoke to him, we kind of broke down our business model, we broke down our business plan, we showed him our projections. And because he's an insider and he understands how these things work, he's able to make sense of those projections, and he's able to see that there's an opportunity here. And so once we kind of spoke to him, Benji, it was sort of a wrap. We didn't know that there was sort of like a Las Vegas mafia almost of iGaming. And so these guys are phenomenal. And along with Lloyd, they've been great mentors to us. anytime we have some sort of question, they're the first people we reach out to. And even the problems that we reach out with, it seems like they've encountered a few of them before in the past. And so working with them has just been great. And I think finding the right group, that's really the key over here. If you kind of go and you're trying to raise funds and you're coming across people who don't understand what you're proposing, it's possible that you're just, kind of doing a shotgun approach and approaching too many people in too many different fields. And once you do find the right people, though, they'll kind of resonate with you and be able to find other people who are also a part of that network, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, right. Because it's kind of like a marriage in business, almost like when your investors are on board, it is difficult to separate them from the company, right? I mean, and so that's something you think a lot about as well when you're talking to investors. Is the dynamics work and you can trust them and they can trust you and stuff like that?
Right, exactly. It's about how we can help them, but also how they can help us, more importantly. And I think sometimes that's not stressed enough. When you're looking for investment partners, you don't want them to be dead weight, so to speak. You want them to be, want there to be a lot of synergy there. And everybody across the board that we've partnered with, we feel like there's a lot of synergy.
Yeah. No, it's important for sure. And I think it was Chris Grove who told me once that raising capital can either be the best process that you go through, or it can be the most frustrating process in the world to go through as well. Because a lot of investors is a tedious process. They are interested, and then in the very, very last moment, they want to start negotiating the evaluation or something like this, and it just all falls apart, and you have to start over. And it's nerve-wracking because at some point when you raise capital, at some point you need that capital injection to the company, but for you guys, it seems like it was a quite smooth process.
Yeah, it actually was. In terms of the things you're talking about, like deals falling through, people renegotiating the valuation. Luckily, we raised in 2021, the beginning of 2021, and there's many variables that go into this. It's also the economic forecast, how things are currently going, and it's a combination of all these things. But we were raising at the beginning of 2021, where being an investor was you were kind of looking for investments very aggressively in 2021.
Yeah.
And so we kind of had that pro with us, but we also had a lot of traction from the past, and a lot of people try to raise from a point of having no traction or no product. And I think that would be very difficult. But for us, we had a product, we had a ton of monthly active users, and it was about converting those users onto this new game that we were creating. So it kind of all came together pretty well. But I'm surprised, just like you, I'm surprised that there isn't a more easier process, but instead it's like getting individual people to sign these agreements at a certain valuation. And that can be kind of tedious.
Yeah, no, for sure. So when did you do the last raise that you did? Was in 2021, you mentioned, right?
That's right. That's the only raise we did. It was in June of 2021.
All right. Oh, okay, cool. And so, what's the plan now for Verdict MMA? You mentioned the DFS platform. What's to come? What do you have ahead of yourself, and how do you see the product developing?
Yeah, so we've always had a giant roadmap of things that we wanted to do, and we've never had the time to do it, which is a common problem everywhere. And so what we did was we hired a few folks in the product and engineering and design space, and we started working on Verdict tournaments, which we actually released Friday before last, and our first event was UFC 275, which was last Saturday. And things went really well. We're so happy that we wrote tests and things went really smoothly. And it's really going to allow us to get feedback now that we have that out there. There was a point in time where we were just teasing folks on what we're actually releasing, and people would guess just across the board what we're creating. And because we're partners with Ben Askren, people would keep guessing crypto. And so coming out with a DFS was a complete curveball. And so having that out there now, that's sort of fuel that we see that we're going to be using to create all these products that we want to create for the MMA space. There's so many tiny things missing from here and there that we want to go back and create things that we want to see in the space. as well as double downing on a DFS niche product for MMA. There's no experience really like that. Like right now, you have these operators that kind of operate across the board. They have a game and they apply it to all the sports, because then your total addressable market's much bigger. Yeah. But for us, it's just about the niche. It's just about the community. It's just about creating a game that's very specific for MMA.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's interesting to hear. And by the way, speaking of the UFC 275, how good was Glover Teixeira versus Jiri the Samurai?
Oh, it was phenomenal. Like we were all we're huge Jiri fans. Like we love the guy, and we love the ethos that he gives off. And to see Glover do so well against him, and then Jiri come on top at the end there with the submission. Like I mean, we thought everyone, it's the 5th round, everyone's kind of like tuning out a bit, and then that happens. We're all like, great, the age of Jiri can actually happen. Like we were just very excited for that.
Yeah, it was. That's one of the best fights ever. Yeah. I mean, that was crazy. Like talk about old man strength with Glover Teixeira. He's 42 years old. I'm a big fan of Alexander Gustafsson. We used to train at the same gym. Like we never trained together. He much. I mean, his curve was obviously incredibly higher than mine. But at that time, we used to as a team, we used to go and support Alex at his fights before the UFC. And so when he joined the UFC, it was a big thing for us. And obviously, he fought Glover Teixeira. That must have been like 6 years ago, something like that. And Alex won by knockout and that, and it felt like Glover Teixeira was on the way out. He was getting older and so on, and then he comes back to take the light heavyweight championship, and then he puts that performance against Jiri, and it's like the best fight ever. But it was so sad that Glover lost. Honestly, like it took the air out a little bit, but it's incredible fight. I mean, it's just, and it was that pivotal moment in the 5th round where Glover does this like massive right hand, almost knocks Jiri out, and then he goes for the choke. Basically goes for a guillotine. Obviously, he's weak. The arms are weak, and it's very slippery. He slips out of the guillotine, and had he not done that, he would have won the fight. It's like it's sad, yeah. But that's how it is. Right? That's the best sport in the world. Anything can happen.
That's what's so wild about it. It's like a single moment like that can define history and the trajectory of two individuals. And that having that rear naked choke could have been kind of like, it could have been, it could have tainted Jiri's sort of self-confidence. You never know how his trajectory would have done after that fight. But certainly, I'm happy for that outcome, but I know you're probably a Glover fan, right? That's why you're
exactly.
For that outcome.
I just, you just cheer for the underdog, you know what I mean? And in this case, no one thought that Glover would actually be able to win, and let alone in the fashion that it was about to take place, So it's like it's funny, like a little mistake like that will like change the course of a career in a fighter, more or less, because he's there. He'll remember that. It's sad. Maybe there's a rematch, and maybe he'll take it again. So I have a feeling though, if there's a go ahead, Sandy.
I was just gonna say, if you actually take a look, we actually have a global scorecard on Verdict, and if you look at the global scorecard, Glover was winning 3 out of 4 of the rounds previously before going into the 5th round. So it almost certainly would have been a win for Glover had he held on for the additional amount of time. Like it would have been. Yeah, he was so close.
It's like what was like the fight prediction before the fight for Glover Teixeira and Jiri? Can you see that as well, or that would be interesting to see.
You see the most common pick here, and it was actually Jiri by knockout. Like I remember people didn't really think it'd go past the 1st or 2nd. Considering all the training that Jiri does, but people were also saying Glover by submission would be a huge thing and a huge possibility. But what actually ended up happening was Jiri by submission, which nobody saw coming, and except one fan on Verdict actually saw it coming, and he bet all of his points on that. It was phenomenal. Nobody saw it coming, but that's what makes those moments so amazing. It's like People thought that Glover was going to get the submission, but it actually ended up happening the other way around, which, that's why the sport's so amazing.
Yeah, exactly. It was. I saw someone posted on Reddit that they bet like $1 or something on Jiri by submission in 5th round. Like, this is like stupid bet, And I think they got something like 350 times the money back or something. Like, it's like, yeah. Well done. That's when you should bet, a little bit more than $1. But lesson learned, I suppose. So Sanjay, like, I joined your Discord here, and I saw it. Like, I mean, you guys have like, it's like 5,000 members or something on your Discord.
Yeah,
obviously, like, and obviously, like, the community aspect of Reddit MMA seems to be an integral part of your business model. Like, can you talk about like how do you build a community like that is kind of like self-sustaining, and how important is it to kind of nurture and build that community around your product?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's hard to make it self-sustaining. Making it self-sustaining is kind of tough because you'll always have like bad actors in the community.
So that's true. Yes.
Yeah, you need somebody enforcing the rules. But building this community, Mandy's done a great job building it. On Instagram we have 84,000 community members, and on Discord we have 8,000 members. And during fight nights, for folks who are kind of alone or on the road, jumping into that Discord, I've done it myself sometimes when I have to watch the fights myself. It just gives you perspective on what people are thinking for particular things, like, what are people thinking about that walk-in? What are they thinking about, what the corner's doing, or something that happens silly in the background. It's always interesting to see. But I think the benefit of growing that community is you get that it kind of proves your product market fit. It proves that you're in like a category where people are kind of wanting something, but you have to figure out what that something is. So you can figure that out by getting feedback from that community, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, going back to your question, you really need like what we found was the scorecards really drove people in, because there was a lot of controversy around the scorecards, and why there was controversy. It's because it's unfair for some fighters to win sometimes because judges are judging a particular way, and so it's really if you break that situation down, it's really about transparency and providing transparency to some group of people, and then reinforcing fairness in some sort of way. And for us, the solution really isn't doing scoring with the masses. It would be getting more judges into the mix, maybe getting like one judge that's represented by everybody, which would be really cool. But yeah, I think it's a few things combined. Again, it's about that transparency. It's about companionship. And with that, you kind of have a recipe for a community.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, like you mentioned, it's a very niche DFS product. You're focusing on one particular sport, so to say. Is there enough liquidity to sustain a business model like that? Like,
yeah, we think so. So when we did calculations back in 2019. We saw that there's actually a $100 million opportunity in this space with just DFS in MMA. And we did that based off of people who already gamble, already play DFS, and the amount of viewership in the UFC. And so we saw a huge opportunity. And that was back in 2019. That was like pre-pandemic times.
Yeah.
And so over the pandemic, you'll remember that the UFC was one of the only promotions.
Yeah, it's accelerated. Yeah.
Right, accelerated immensely. And at the same time, you have these other forces from gaming and fantasy sports that have been growing as well. Legislation, specifically in North America, which has been just a boon. And so with those two kind of joined together, that kind of answers the question of like, why is now the right time? It's because those forces are really combining.
Yeah, right. And I mean, as you mentioned here, Sanjay, like the UFC specifically really got a massive boost during the pandemic because they were the first kind of sport that resumed after the pandemic. They were very aggressive in kind of finding solutions for how to continue to operate without an audience, and and they built the Fighter Island during the pandemic, and there's a lot like UFC really was front and center at that time, and going back, but not only during the pandemic, because in the last 10 or 15 years, it's gradually the UFC has been kind of establishing itself amongst the mainstream, almost like. What do you think as you look forward now in the next couple of years? Like, what will the trajectory be of the sport in general, do you think? Do you think it will be like more and more adopted by the mainstream, or has it kind of reached where it should be right now?
I think it's going to be adopted way more, and it's because really it's a young sport. It's only 30 years old, and even then, it's only been super mainstream for the last few decades, like 20 years.
Yeah.
And so seeing our core demographic be this certain age of 18 to 35, as time goes on over the next 10 years, that's going to shift. And as that shifts, there's going to be the newcomers that come in as well, right? And so you have a lot of older people who are into other sports like, baseball or boxing, and you're kind of seeing those sports kind of decline, and you're seeing MMA become much bigger. And you see all these other promotions also in the space that are growing and getting much higher valuations. You have the PFL that has a $500 million valuation earlier this year in May.
Wow.
Yeah. And they raised money then. And then you also have One Championship, which is conventionally
huge
in Asia. Yeah, huge. Their Prime deal. I think it's
massive.
Super massive. Like for me, I always say, like, I try to imagine a universe with the UFC kind of being much easier to access rather than $80. Obviously, making that change is kind of tough for them because it might be the right move, but it might be the wrong move at the same time. But seeing somebody experiment with that, and a big organization like One doing that and coming to primetime as well, it's going to grow. I think it's going to grow. I think it's a good sign for everybody in the space.
And it's cool as well, I think, with One, who, kind of filled a void in Asia after Pride, was bought by the UFC, and then eventually it was scrapped. But for the longest time in Asia, they obviously have a lot of legacy when it comes to their interest in martial arts in general. But there wasn't really a massive organization that could contend with the size of the UFC. But it feels like One is turning into that kind of competitor, and I love what they're doing with like the mixed fights. How awesome is that? Like, it's so cool.
DJ fighting and Rodtang, like they had the whole 2 rounds a certain style and 2 rounds of MMA. Like, it's very interesting to watch because that really stretches fighters, like their IQ, and like can you support this different fighting style. It is interesting. A lot of purists might be turned off by that, but it's kind of interesting to see it when it's 2 people like Rodtang and DJ. When you're like, if you find any other style, like one person would have the advantage. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, dude, I'm all in on that. Like do as many fucked up rules as you can. Like I love it. Like it's so cool. Yeah. And it's cool, they mix it up in one. Like there would be like a kickboxing fight, and then next up is an MMA fight, and then you have this like mixed rules fight and so on. They have just done it really well, and they seem to have captured like the audience in Asia. And maybe they will turn into they still don't have the best fighters in the world on the MMA side of things, but the way things are progressing for them, like you mentioned here, with the big primetime deal, give it a couple of years, and maybe One will be the organization that starts taking pole position. Like,
yeah, it's interesting to think about. Like, ultimately, I think the UFC does such a good job on many levels that people don't even kind of see. Like, they're doing such a good job on minor details. But you're totally right that One, they've had a metric recently that they've had more views online per second than any other promotion, and so that's kind of like a skewed stat. Like obviously they're pulling like a stat that maybe people don't look at a lot, but it kind of starts from there, right? It kind of starts from stats like that. Like they just did a really good job on their social media team and reposting their great content. But it kind of starts like that, and then things kind of slip. But we never know. Like 5-10 years, we never know. But I really pride Verdict for being a kind of a decentralized organization and being able to support different partnerships. And now that we have funding, it's more likely to move and partner with a lot more different promotions, and also automating that and having that in our system automatically. People have asked for this for a very long time, and kind of supporting all the different promotions would be something we'd want to see as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, have you been in contact with these organizations like One, UFC, and so on for official partnership? Like, is there anything like happening on that front for you guys?
Yeah, we have. Like, we've reached out to a number of these during the pandemic. Of course, a lot of these weren't operating. The PFL came back pretty quick, and we had a partnership with them right out of the pandemic. And ever since then, we've been really focusing on the DFS game. Kind of how our roadmap has been working is, if it's not DFS, we didn't really want to focus on it because we wanted to get that to market really fast. And once we get that to market, we can start supporting some of these other kind of initiatives that we wanted to take. So that was kind of our mindset. Let's get DFS out there ASAP, start collecting some metrics, and then start delivering on some of this stuff that users really wanted.
Yeah, fair enough. Sanjay, I have we're gonna start rounding off here a little bit, but I have a couple of rapid fire MMA questions for you. Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, let's do it. Who's the best fighter who never held a belt?
Oh shit, that's hard.
This is also a trick question, by the way. There's a right answer to this. So.
Oh, is it? Is there?
Just like the GOAT.
Is it Artem? I'm gonna say Artem.
Artem Lobov? There you go. Yes. Okay. Fine. I see myself defeated. That is actually the right answer. How can I not realize this? Yes. The legendary the Russian Hammer, right? Yeah. Artem Lobov, the right hand man of Conor.
Yeah, I love that question though. That's such a thought-provoking question. The space is so big, is why. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was gonna say Alexander Gustafsson. So that was gonna be the right answer, but you actually came up with an even better answer. So kudos to you for that, Sanjay. What was your favorite fight ever?
Oh, I would say Rory McDonald versus Robbie Lawler.
Yes,
that fight was I don't know. It was like art. it was just crazy. Like in some of these fights, you kind of see a fighter do really well, and sometimes you don't see it reciprocate. But in that fight, they were just reciprocating with each other, like toe to toe. It's nuts.
Yeah, that was awesome. And the crazier thing was that was the co-main event to then Conor McGregor. It was Aldo, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Like it was actually I'm not sure, but that fight kind of overshadowed it for me in a way.
Exactly.
That was it was just...
but it was just so crazy that you had that fight, and then it's like, oh, by the way, now we have Conor McGregor fighting here, and the biggest fight ever.
Right.
That card was just insane. Yeah.
It doesn't compare.
Brilliant. What was your favorite finish ever in MMA?
I already said it. It's Anderson Silva, the front kick to Vitor. Like that was by far. It was so clean. I loved it.
Yeah. That was a good finish as well. And
oh wait, sorry. Can I add a runner-up? A runner-up to that. DJ was fighting, and I forgot who it was, but he had a armbar in the air that he did.
The flying armbar.
The flying armbar. I think the expertise displayed in that fight. He was looking so forward ahead in time that he knew that he could get an armbar, and he had it when he was 90%. Away from the ground. It was just wild. I remember that vividly.
He transitioned from a suplex, so like a wrestling suplex, into a flying armbar in the air.
Crazy.
Like Spider-Man. Yeah. I agree with that. That's probably it. Or that's a good alternative too. I'll agree with that too. And finally, if you were the matchmaker of the UFC and you could make one fight, which fight would you make?
I think it'd be Islam and Oliveira. I think I would make that, but that's because I'm not a matchmaker. Maybe Islam needs a few more fights before facing Oliveira, but that's a fight that I really want to see.
Fair enough. I was gonna say if you want to think a bit outside the box, it would be Ngannou versus Conor McGregor.
Oh, you meant between weight classes as well?
You can choose whatever you like.
Oh, okay.
This is you are the man now, Sanjay. You can do whatever you want.
That is that's interesting. I think I'm going to take my answer back, and I didn't think of that. I would do John Jones versus Adesanya.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes.
Yeah,
that's a really good one.
Yeah, I just think John Jones. I mean, if we never saw him fight again, it'd be the saddest thing ever. Like he's just so young and talented. And Adesanya is just I know I vibe with him. I love his style. He's so entertaining. And seeing the two go head to head would just be it would just be amazing for me. Yeah.
That would be incredible to see. That would be a good fight to make for sure. Yeah. There was someone I saw this question on Reddit, and someone said Pat Barry versus Rose Namajunas.
Yeah.
It's weird. Awesome. And I guess finally now, there's the UFC 276 coming up. Speaking about Adesanya, he's fighting now in like 2 weeks' time. Right. Like, what's the prediction saying so far on Adesanya versus Cannonier?
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm a huge Adesanya stan. I already said that. I think I think Adesanya is gonna take it, and I hope he takes it. I think he's one of those champions that are so charismatic. I think he's just a smart guy overall. Like he has his own YouTube channel that I tune into regularly, and his dad Adesanya, he's on Verdict as well. He's like scoring every single round. So
no way.
Yeah, I'm team Adesanya like all the way for 276.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. And you have another really interesting fight, Volkanovski and Holloway as well. Can Holloway take it, do you think, or is he past his prime?
I think it's not even about Holloway. It's about Volkanovski. Like he's just on a different level. Like that guy is a Super Saiyan. Like the speed that you kind of see him operate at, people just can't keep up. Like when you watch him, it's like it's choreographed almost. Like he's so quick, he's so fast. I don't think it's a Holloway at this point, but I'm very excited to see like what the scorecard would say. I don't think it's going to be like a first round knockout or anything like that. Like I think it might even go the distance. And at that point, we'd have another controversial scorecard.
Yeah. I have a feeling that it's going to be a bit of a sad night for Holloway, to be honest. It feels like Holloway is slowing down a bit. He isn't that old, but he's been in the UFC for a long time. He was like 21 years old when he joined the UFC. It's like at some point, man, it's difficult to keep that pace, unfortunately.
He's one of those fighters I'd like to have seen retire earlier.
Yeah.
But fighting is kind of interesting in that if you dominated in a certain era, you still wouldn't be able to retire early, just because that's the way fighting kind of worked out. Yeah. Whereas now fighters typically make a bit more, and with the right partnership deals, you can actually retire early. You have a lot more opportunities in different spaces. You can make a YouTube channel, you can start commentating, but it's unfortunate that people who were in the game many years ago and have been in the game for a while, they didn't really have that opportunity.
Oh, exactly. Like these old like legends, like the Chuck Liddells and Tito Ortiz and all these guys. Like it's a different time, man. Like they came and it's like the hardcore fans know who they are, But outside of that, it's not that many people. I remember, back in the day, I was at UFC 100 in Vegas, and that was the first time they did the UFC Expo. It was a funny thing, I had just turned 21, so it was my first time in Vegas, and we competed, me and my friend, in the UFC Expo. There was Grappler's Quest. We competed in grappling. It was like the coolest thing, We went to the Expo, and there was like lots of these fighters who were there. We could take photos with them, and everyone was really cool. And then there was, oh my God, what's his name? Ken Shamrock. Was like this, like he was like UFC 3 or something. He was fighting,
Legend,
and that was one of those typical guys who were like, at that time in the beginning of the UFC, he was the man. He was the champion, and everyone was looking up to him. And there was this big rivalry between him and Tito Ortiz, and. But rewind, fast forward the tape a couple of years, and not that many people know him, and it was so sad because I remember seeing Ken Shamrock, and I was like, Ken Shamrock, let's take a photo together. And he was like, "Oh, it's $20 for a photo." Like, God damn it, man! Like, has it really gone that far? You know, it's so sad. You know.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, especially for those early legends, because an athlete of that caliber in any other sport, like soccer or basketball or football, they'd be like retired and having a really good time like pretty early. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that happens. That's really cool. We're going to the UFC Expo this year actually as a team, just because we happen to be in Las Vegas at the time, and it almost seems like something like that. That's just a good opportunity, kind of like who knows who we'll see when we're there.
Yes. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's really cool to see. I remember when I was walking through the halls, and there was Junior Dos Santos. He was like randomly walking through the hall, and I was, let's take a photo. He wasn't the champion at the time, because it was Frank Mir and Lesnar who fought the second time for the belt. It's UFC 100, but he was like the up and comer at that time. Right? It's funny, you see these people that you only see on TV and walking around like normal people. It's very cool to go there. Yeah,
we had that with a recent event that we went to. Like we were just in the lobby of the MGM, and we saw Tony Ferguson just walking, and nobody was going up to him, and we're like, we just like ran up to him, and then after that, a queue started up behind us, and we felt bad, but we're like, Tony's such a legend, like we have to say hi.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Sondre, last question for you before we round off today. Like, where do you see Verdict MMA in 3 years' time?
Yeah, I see us kind of being the perfect blend of product and community. Our strength is really being able to target a specific niche, a specific community, and we really want to double down on that. And so in 3 years, it'd be great to see Verdict being synonymous with MMA. If you watch MMA, you definitely use Verdict. That's what we want to see.
That's a cool vision, though. I like that. Awesome. Sondre, thank you so much. It's been fun geeking out with you here today on the MMA side of things, and to learn more about the project and where you guys are heading. So it's been great to get to know you here over the last couple of weeks, and thanks for sharing this hour with me today, and I wish you all the best.
Likewise, Pierre. Thank you so much. Cheers.